Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Back to Basics. Hooray, we're still here. You haven't got rid of us yet. Woo, good for you. So we are going to be digging into Genesis chapter 29, and for the purposes of doing so, I am Pastor Don, and I am joined once again by everybody's favorite Courtney out of all possible multiversal Courtneys, Courtney.
Whoa, wow.
I know, it's amazing. So we are going to be digging into Genesis chapter 29, and it's funny. It's fun. It's going to involve funny things that are funny, or at the very least, very, very sad. So we are going to be digging into it. Courtney, I'm going to ask you to read for us today. Courtney's going to be reading from the NRSVUE, the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition. So if you want to follow along, for those of you playing the home game, you can do that thusly.
I'm going to get mad again, aren't I?
Yeah, well, like last week's episode with the spite wife didn't really piss you off so much. I'm not sure how much this one's going to go, but we will certainly be giving it the good college try to get you as pissed off as possible, because that's what this era of biblical history does.
It's just, there's a point at which the feminine rage, the feminist rage just kind of like bottom. What am I going to do? What am I going to do about this? Like, no, this is how shit was.
Yeah. Fun fact, that's how most American society works. They just bury you in that rage until it just becomes, this is what it is. So anyway, shall we read the Bible?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Take it away.
Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field and 3 flocks of sheep lying there beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob, my brothers, where do you come from? They said, we are from Haran. He said to them, do you know Laban, son of Nahor? They said, we do. He said to them, is it well with him? Yes, they replied, and here is his daughter Rachel coming with the sheep. He said, look, it is still broad daylight. It is not time for the animals to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them. But they said, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. Now when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his mother's brother Laban, oh, here we go, and the sheep of his mother's brother Laban, Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of his mother's brother Laban. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. Weird again.
Yep. Oh, keep it going.
I am. I gotta scroll here. When Laban heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he ran to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him a month. It's probably only supposed to be a week. Jacob marries Laban's daughters. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed. Wow. Just putting it all out there. Sorry, I had to scroll again. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. When morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "This is not done in our country, given the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week. You're going to have to tell me what that means. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her maid. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served Laban for another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben, for she said, "Because the Lord has looked on my affliction, surely now my husband will love me." She conceived again and bore a son, and said, "Because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also," and she named him Simeon. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, "Now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." Therefore he was named Levi. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, "This time I will praise the Lord." Therefore she named him Judah. Then she ceased bearing.
Okay. So, as I said, it's a fun one. And before we dig into it, I'm going to go ahead and say that if there's anybody still watching or listening to this stuff who still believes in the idea of biblical marriage, this is it. This is it. That's what biblical marriage is. Buying yourself a couple of wives and just screw on the ones that you like the best. So yeah, there are a lot of things that happen. I want to.
I love this one, and this one can make babies for me.
Exactly. Like, this one's got a bonus feature. So I'm going to call attention real quick to verse 21. Where Jacob says to Laban, and I'm going to read this out of Alter's translation, "Give me my wife, for my time is done, and let me come to bed with her." Like, he doesn't actually say in his translation.
Come to bed with her is so much less creepy than go into her.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Let me read you Alter's notes on that particular verse. "The explicitness of Jacob's statement is sufficiently abrupt to have triggered maneuvers of exegetical justification throughout the Midrash, but it is clearly meant to express his understandable sexual impatience, which is about to be given quite an unexpected outlet." So, like, this verse is meant to be explicit. I would like to do the sex now. Give me the thing, what for the sex? Like, that's pretty much where Jacob's coming at with this. So in a certain sense, go into her is just as accurate as the more poetic take her to bed. Because Jacob wasn't screwing around with the fact that he wasn't screwing around.
Just like take her to bed, not maybe the most common phraseology you hear for that. Go into her is immediate, like, red flag vibes. Like,
yeah, that's the thing you would expect to find in certain corners of 4chan or something. Like, that's not a common expression. But so I've hit a couple of points, but what are your first reactions to this big old pile of fun?
Oh, what was the completed her week business?
Okay, yeah, that's worth mentioning. I'm going to read this again out of Alter's translation because he's a little more explicit with this. "And Laban said, 'Is it not done thus in our place to give the younger girl before the firstborn? Finish out the bridal week of this one, and we shall give you the other as well for the service you render me for still another 7 years.'" This is a common thing. I don't have much of here in the notes of this one, but this is a common thing in that time and place, that you had what was called a bridal week, basically the same thing as a honeymoon, really, where you would take a new wife and then you would get your use out of said wife. Get your money's worth.
Go bang and then get to know each other if you care to.
Yeah, you would go into her and then out of her and then into her again, and then so on and so forth until you had finished out the week. Like, so this was a common cultural practice. So the translation in the NRSVUE and others where it just says play out the week or whatever it exactly it is, like that's assuming a knowledge that isn't modernly present. Like there was a traditional practice here that's being honored by the bridal week. So take the week, enjoy your new bride, and then we'll start another 7 years and we'll get you the one that you asked for in the first place. It's pretty much what Laban is saying here. But yeah, so there's that piece. Anything else that has inspired said feminist rage again? Rekindled some embers, perhaps?
It ends up, I mean, verse 31 onward is just, yes, incredibly sad. Mental health is important, kids. But just trying to see, and there's a whole part right at the beginning too.
Yeah, all of it really. You called attention. Well, you look up that part. You called attention to the bit at the end where it turns out that Leah can have kids and Rebecca can't, and that creates tension here. There is a very clear type of social oppression that's happening here with respect to the women. They're being very clearly treated as property. They don't have agency in this whatsoever. But there is an assumption modernly when we talk about oppressed communities, where we talk about an assumption of shared solidarity, where you assume that just because you're all oppressed together, that you're all going to generally be good with each other. But Leah and Rebecca are sisters and part of a shared oppressed community, but they have internalized that to such a degree that when husband prefers one over the other, like they kind of get mad at each other. And I'm drawing attention to that, not because it's right or it's good, but because it's human. Because this is something that happens, like if you're in an oppressed community, you've seen that. People of differing interests within oppressed communities that fight with each other rather than fighting against the oppressor. If you've ever been in a victimized or oppressed community, this happens. And it's a normal part of human nature. Doesn't mean it's right or good, but there is a realism in what's being presented here with the emotional interactions that I think is important for us to recognize. So I've said my piece on that. What have you found?
I don't quite know what to say.
It's something. You had something at the beginning you said you wanted to dig into, right?
The thing that I said, I'm gonna have to ask you about that was the completing her week thing.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also, if we want to draw attention to a lack of agency too, verse 11, where he waters the sheep and then just hauls off and kisses her. Like,
yeah,
that tells you everything you need to know about how this story is going to progress right there at the top. That, yeah, we're not dealing with women possessing agency in this one.
Yeah.
So there's that, and it is worth noting that, and I get this in Alter's notes here, is that the act of Jacob rolling the stone away from the well here is meant to be a bigger deal than it carries over in English, because that wasn't a one-man job. That wasn't something that one man would typically do on his own. It'd take a couple people to roll that stone away. So the fact that Jacob just kind of rocks up and rolls that stone away, like this is very much the prototypical model of the teenager at youth group carrying 97 chairs in each arm. Like he's strutting his stuff for Rebecca here. That's really what he's doing. He's trying to show off. And apparently he does so with a reasonable degree of success, but like that piece, like we stroll over that in English as being, okay, so we rolled the stone away, big deal. None of us knows what a well's like. It doesn't really matter. But like the dynamic piece of that he's really doing the whole showing off by lifting chairs thing, that's kind of worth knowing, at least that you can get the dynamic of what's happening here. Yeah.
The Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud, like did kind of throw, like that's a different sort of what is that in the translation that you have, verse 11?
Let's see. Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. It's not dissimilar. I think the easiest way to explain that, like first off, there's some wordplay that's happening there. Because there's a pun between he watered and he kissed because the two are very similar. So there's kind of a bit of a dad jokey pun happening there leading into that. This comes up again in the Song of Solomon later on. They use this kind of play on words a lot. So there is a play on words happening there, but also like the whole wept thing. Not to put too fine a point on it, but dude has been wandering the desert, just him and his sheep and camels and what have you for a minute. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That is exactly what it is. It's the mouth part. That's exactly what's happening here. He's like, oh, thank God, a female. Like, that's really all it is. Like we love to read, because particularly because of the less poetic older phraseologies of the Bible, we like to read into this more kind of divine poetic emotion than is really present. Like, okay, he lifted his eyes and he wept, like, okay, but like he was really just like, oh my God, it's a girl and it's been forever. Oh, thank God. Like the actual emotion at play.
It reads to me more as like, I have to have her.
The two aren't mutually.
I'm crying boner tears.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to put it I've heard yet. He's crying boner.
Is that the title of this episode? Boner tears.
Yeah, I'm calling it right now. That's the episode title. You have done it. Congratulations. But then again, it's worth noting that like we can excuse this as him having been in the desert for freaking ever, but like this, I'm distracted by my dick energy really stays with him for the rest of the story. Like, I mean, as much as we in the church have liked to play on Laban for his duplicity here, like, dude took a woman in marriage, brought her back to the tent, screwed her presumably repeatedly from the way this is written, had all this sex, and did not notice it was the wrong woman until the next day. Like,
this woman he had been near and lusting after for 3/4 of a decade.
Yeah, and not to put too fine a point on it as well, like, I don't necessarily buy into the ingrained sexism of, and Leah's eyes were tender, but Rachel was comely in features and comely to look at. Like, I'm not going to buy into the
catching that one
standard
too
of it, but like, they didn't look like the same person. They weren't twins. Like, that much at least we can take away from this. So, you know, we talk about a guy leading with his dick. That's exactly what's happening here. And like, we cannot excuse that piece of Jacob in all of this, because he is leading so hard with his boner that he is literally failing to acknowledge the women that he's with as anything other than accessories for his parts. So like,
yeah.
And,
well, I mean, you saw me just have to like stop for a second out of disgust at that one. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Yeah. Fuck you. Yeah.
Like, also, she's the only one of the two of them with a working womb. So wait till you find that out. But, you know, that aside, all of that aside, this continues the ongoing theme that we have of our biblical heroes being really kind of assholes. Like, there are, and part of this is reading our modern mores into it, I'll admit. But part of it kind of isn't. Like, the ancient figures weren't meant to be held up as morally perfect. Like, Laban was deceptive, sure, but like in a really broad and easy to see through way, and Jacob missed it completely because he didn't see the women as anything other than objects. Like, yeah, that's a thing. Like, Laban isn't a good guy here, but neither is Jacob. There really is only maybe arguably one person in this who I would say is good in any way, shape, or form, and that's kind of Leah here, because she really didn't do anything other than have a working uterus. Yeah, you know. But then again, nobody's great in this, or nobody's great in a lot of these stories. Even like flashing back to Abraham, where like Sarai was a victim of everything, and even still at one point she's like, "Screw you, Hagar, specifically. I don't like you." Like everybody gets it on them in this story and in most of these stories.
Almost like everyone's a phenomenal asshole at some point in their life.
Yeah, like
The Bible is taking a chance to tell us this.
Everybody is a dick sometimes. That's the way of life. And I keep coming back to this, but it's important. The biblical heroes aren't perfect. They're assholes like 80% of the time. And this is why, like when we talk about biblical marriage, I brought this up at the beginning. This is biblical marriage here. Women don't have agency. You don't really care about who they are or what they're doing. They're bought and sold like cattle. Biblical heroes are assholes. Like, it's not meant to be a model for us.
I think I might have forgot it. I'll think of it.
I was talking about biblical marriage, and you got your like biblical marriage and yada yada.
No, it was right before that. Oh, ADD is a beast sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. But in any case, then, if it comes to you, it comes to you. But yeah, like there are so many interacting pieces of assholery here, and we're all kind of like that.
Oh, I remember what it was.
Yes,
remember what it was. It was about that. Everyone's a massive dick sometimes. Like, yes, even that person narrative in the Bible. When I went to church, the main, like the sermons that dealt with that, it was like, look at what, the crap this person pulled, and, God still smiled on them and, loved them and forgave them and all that stuff. Like, and, let them prosper. And I feel like the entirely wrong message got taken away from that somehow a lot.
Yeah, that you can be a dick and still prosper.
Yeah.
But I think the message
it's okay. Nothing bad will happen to you if you're a dick to people.
The opposite. This is a message that I tend to preach on this sort of stuff a lot, is that prosperity and righteousness aren't the same thing and aren't connected. Like, we do righteousness because it's good. We do good things because they're good, not because they're going to profit us. And we profit sometimes for things that aren't righteous. Like the two, there's not a causative or correlative relationship between the two. You can, although it's much harder to do so, find people who have profited greatly that are also good. You can find people who are terribly evil, but like are utterly destroyed and never make it anywhere in life. Like, that's possible. But the truth is, it's usually some mix somewhere in the middle, because righteousness and profitability aren't connected. Righteousness and success aren't connected, even in the biblical narrative. Like, the good guys, the ones who deserve it, the ones who are righteous about it, don't usually win. Like this, the Bible isn't the story of the good guys keep winning. It's the story of the bad guys win, and sometimes the good guys are the bad guys, and we're all just generally human, and God works a redemptive arc through it all. Like, this is the end story, is how all of this brokenness
is this confirming what I've been on about for years, about like calling a person good or bad is like nowhere near, is like possibly destructive rather than useful, as opposed to looking at like the individual actions and judging them as to be good or evil?
Ding, 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 ding. You are correct. And that's the same lesson the Bible's been teaching for forever, that like there's no such thing as a truly good or truly bad person, because, and short answer for those of you who are theology geeks, what I'm about to explain here is called the doctrine of total depravity. The short answer of it is, everybody's a little bit screwed up. Everything that we do is touched by the arc of sin. So no matter what we do, it's never going to be perfect. Like, all of our actions have the potential to be terrible or horrible or bad or wonderful or good. And we're always going to be pulled in one direction or the other, because that's the world we live in. That's life, in which the forces of evil are rampant in our own hearts and the things that we do and in the world around us. So no, there's no such thing as a good person, because let me tell you from experience. Hi, me, ordained pastor, minister of word and sacrament and seminary, and I wear the fun little collar half the time and all of that stuff. I can't tell you the amount of evil things I've done in my life. We all have. Like, we have all screwed up. I've got the receipts. I know you've got a couple of them for me as well. Like we've been there. We've done stuff, and that's the human experience. And judging a person as good or bad based on like some amalgamated like assessment of the good or bad that they've done isn't helpful or correct. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's as good a point of any to end on, unless you got anything else you want to dig into.
Yeah, no, I feel like we've taken a lot out of this. And again, we need to stop ourselves from going like ape on it sometimes. So these are more easier to digest.
Yeah. So we are going to be getting into the interactions between Rachel and Jacob and Leah a lot more in our next episode. But for today, I want to thank you all for watching to the end. We're getting awfully close to Easter. So if you are one of our Japan side listeners, there's stuff happening in the physical community here in Japan. Information, all that's down on the website. Come check it out. If you are not in Japan, even if you are, I'm not going to make any differences on this. Join the Discord server, man. It's been 40 some odd episodes. If you haven't gotten that message by now, for the love of Jesus, Herbert Walker Christ, get in that Discord server. We need
seriously.
you.
I will say this. If you enjoy watching this show or listening to this podcast, you will probably enjoy getting into the server. Just the week that this is recorded, we've had just even a couple new people in, and just the conversation amount of like really amazing conversation that's going on, the amount of fellowship that's going on is really nice to see.
We're actually currently discussing with some of the new people the possibility of doing regular streaming to laugh at, make fun of, and or critique vegetable-based evangelical media. So that could be a
serious
fun thing to do. So like there's stuff happening, man, and or woman, and in between. So come and join us. It will be fun. But if none of that works out for you, there's always a trinity of things that you can do. And I'm gonna kick it over to Courtney to explain.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Those are the ones. Because if nothing else, more eyes on these things always helps. So that being said, I want you guys to have a wonderful and blessed week. We're thinking about you. We're praying for you. And I want you to take care. And we will see you on the next episode of Back to All Dem Basics. Bye, y'all.
Bye.